Thank you very much to the Garma Festival for giving me a chance to be here. Thank you to the traditional owners, the Gumich and the Yolngu people generally, for the wonderful way they host this event and each year add to our knowledge and understanding. Not enough, but do add to it. And finally, as I say to our chair, no thanks to you for asking me to be funny, because I'm not very funny. But I don't mind sharing with you. In a long history of working with Aboriginal people, I can only be absolutely certain that I brought Aboriginal people pleasure on one occasion. And in 55 years, that's a pretty poor record, but it is unfortunately true. And the occasion was by accident, because as Minister, I was flown from Alice Springs to Utopia by these very efficient DAA officers, bloody useless bastards. Oh, sorry, Bill. They mixed up the car keys, so when we got to Utopia, we couldn't start the car. So I did my whole tour of Utopia in the back of the paddy wagon. And I've never seen a happier bunch of Aboriginal people in my life. They really loved my visit. It may have done them no good, but it certainly improved their day. So that was my story. I think this has been a very rich couple of days, and I could linger on some of the lessons I've learned over the last couple of days, but there's a particular area I would like to address. But I want to say that I thought Noel Pearson's speech yesterday was really important, and I'm not going to talk about that, although it's something that is really troubling me, whether we are leaving any space at all for the long-term maintenance of what we so proudly talk about, the world's oldest living cultures. I think we are putting our hands around the throat of Australia's oldest living cultures. We're leaving Aboriginal people very little room to move, to think, to contemplate the alternate futures that they have to think about. Again, Noel wrote a wonderful essay called Radical Hope, which addresses that issue of what future are people imagining. I don't think people are being left much space to imagine the future of their culture or themselves. And I think in our unanimous support for economic development, for economic engagement, all things that I believe in, and my even greater support for education, that Aboriginal people could be confident in two cultures is my ultimate dream for them. I don't know whether it's their dream for themselves. But in the helter-skelter and the piling in of new ministers, new governments, new ideas, new pressures, that we squeeze the life out of the people that we're ostensibly trying to save. So I really ask you all to read Noel's essay of yesterday. I think it is really, really important, and I certainly intend to revisit it. What I want to talk about, though, was something that was addressed by Marcia and others. Marcia said government bureaucracy must work for us and not against us, and we got some wonderful views. I say wonderful because I totally agree with them, being put forward by the empowered communities about the need for localism, the need for not one size fits all, but for solutions which fit the particular circumstances, the history, the economy, the culture of different places. And I can say that there are some signs of hope that government is hearing those sort of messages, because when you look at the post-budget announcements, you find this extraordinarily grand plan to take 150 programs spread over 1,400 organisations and to slip them down into 5 streams in a rapidly short period of time, and to, at the same time, regionalise your administration. I repeat that because I really ask you to think about the magnitude of the administrative task that the Commonwealth has set itself. I think, well, my mind boggles that this can be done in the time that is available with the skill set that's available. And I think my friend and long-term advisor, my much admired friend Bill Gray, is going to address this side of it, the actual competence of the public service to do this incredibly difficult and complex task. And I think that my main objective this year is to see the government side of the occasion, of the table, actually being in sufficient working order to enable Aboriginal people to benefit and to gain from what government is trying to do. But if I leave that to Bill and turn to the issue of whether government is capable of working in the new ways that empowered communities suggests, and I strongly support the broad notion of empowered communities. I want to see Aboriginal leadership, I want to see Aboriginal people at the table as equals. Surely, if we've learned anything from the past, that is what will work. And let me turn to the white experts, the people within government itself that have diagnosed what works. Let me quote the Productivity Commission, because you'll see a consistency between this analysis and what the Aboriginal people are saying to us at this conference is required. The Steering Committee for the Review of Government Service Provisions, and Gary Banks signed off on this year after year, cooperative approaches between Indigenous people and government, often with the non-profit and private sectors as well. Second, community involvement in program design and decision making, a bottom-up rather than a top-down approach. Good governance at organisation, community and government levels, and ongoing government support, including human, financial and physical resources. Now, can I say after 55 years of sweating on this, I agree with that. I think that is an accurate statement of what will work. And I think it's consistent with what the empowered communities talked about yesterday. If you turn to what the government itself has analysed as what's required for whole of government responses to work, and I won't go through this whole list, but they talk about use of outcome budget frameworks to pool resources. And I just want to emphasise one particular point. Lead agency staff empowered with sufficient authority to manage whole of government settings and to lead the engagement of local stakeholders. Now, my great worry about 2014 is that the Commonwealth Public Service is not equipped to do that job. It is simply not equipped to do it. And I don't care how much goodwill there is. And I listened to the Leader of the Opposition repeating things that I've heard said for decades. And I listen to politicians from the government side saying things we've been hearing for decades. The issue is, are those sentiments going to be turned into action on the ground? Are we going to change the way that we work? And what I wanted to leave you with today is the fact that I think there is an external test that you could apply. An external test you could apply as to whether what government is saying it's going to do in the budget and beyond, what the empowered communities are saying they want to see happen, I offer you a simple test as to whether it is even possible for it to happen. And I'm going to give you an example before I go into that. When the Indigenous Coordination Centres were set up, I thought, what a great idea. Remember the rhetoric? We're going to put all the public servants into a common office and they'll be able to work together and they'll be able to cross-subsidise in the programs. Someone who's done quite a lot of work out this way, Di Smith. I mainly associate with people who are smarter than I am because I've learned that's the way you become a little less stupid. Di Smith said to me, "It won't work, Fred," on day one. I said, "What do you mean it won't work? It's a great idea." She said, "Fred, the accountability of those public servants remains exactly the same as it was. They are not accountable to working together. They are accountable to their departmental guidelines back to head office." And so it proved. That was yet another failed experiment because the legal structure was not put in place to enable the public servants to act in the way that the rhetoric said they were going to act. Now, the rhetoric we have now is that we are going to work in partnership with Aboriginal people. We're going to have availability of pooled funds. Look, I love the rhetoric, but what are the accountabilities here? What are the duty statements of the public servants? What are their instructions about what they're supposed to do? Because unless they get that right, the public servants will, surprise, surprise, obey the law. Public servants operate within a legal framework of accountability, and if that does not point them in the same direction as the rhetoric, it is all words, words, words. I'm an old person, so I still remember My Fair Lady. Words, 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 I'm so sick of words, and I am sick of them. Bill Gray has written a note that I've seen comparing the rhetoric of today with the rhetoric of Vanstone. You can repeat the examples. We've all used the rhetoric. In 1992, we had the national commitment to service delivery of Aboriginal people. In the end, I suggest to you that unless we see that the Commonwealth puts into place clear duty statements for public servants which require them to act in a different way, they will of course continue to act in the old way. Unless they are accountable for working in the new way, of course they will continue to act in the old way. And don't underestimate the challenge that the government has set itself and us. You see, what empowered communities are talking about is the sharing of power. Well, I haven't met too many politicians that actually want to share power. We had the minister here who believes with a passion that bundling children into school is the key. So, it's right, we just heard from the Education Department how important school attendance is. But what I would say is that if things are driven by the immediate political imperatives of government that demand short-term results, we will go on making the same old mistakes and grinding the life out of the Aboriginal people of Australia, the First Nations people. The short-termism of government, the constant changes of direction, public servants behaving as public servants are required to do. And the few that I knew that cut through the boundaries have largely been got rid of. When Brian Stacey left, they lost half their their intellectual capital. So, ladies and gentlemen, I offer you that test. I invite you to examine very carefully over the next 12 months the operating instructions, the legal accountabilities of the Commonwealth Public Service, because if they remain rooted in the past, we will repeat the past.